There are places on Earth so insane that most people would assume they were built for a movie, not real life. In front of us are raging rivers, dust-choked lands, and wilderness so unforgiving that every step feels like a challenge to fate. These are not just strange places to look at, but places that push nature, fear, and the limits of human survival to the extreme. Some of these places are surrounded by sheer cliffs, violent winds, falling rock, fast-moving water, and a level of isolation that makes it hard to believe anyone would go near them. Today, we explore the most dangerous places on Earth, locations so unreal they look impossible, yet they exist right here in the real world. Nazare is one of the most spectacular and terrifying places on Earth, holding the Guinness World Record for the largest wave ever surfed by a human. Here, vertical walls of water, reaching about 100 feet, rise like 10-story buildings made of liquid, racing forward at extreme speed and blocking the entire horizon. When these giant waves collide with the cliffs, they produce explosive sounds and impact strong enough to make the ground vibrate beneath observers standing on shore. On the São Miguel Arcanjo fortress, a small red-roofed lighthouse stands surrounded by white sea spray, forming a stark contrast between fragile human structures and overwhelming natural force. From the Sitio Cliffs, a single viewpoint reveals two parallel worlds, with a calm, golden beach on one side and a violent water inferno on the other, divided within just a few steps of distance. Kjeragbolten is the legendary doorstop rock of Norway, where a massive boulder wedged between two vertical cliffs has become one of the most dangerous yet magnificent check-in locations on Earth. The rock is part of the Kjerag mountain massif, defined by smooth granite walls, rising like colossal natural fortresses directly from the fjord below. Kjeragbolten sits at an elevation of approximately 3,228 feet above sea level, with a sheer vertical void of nearly 3,300 feet beneath it. There are no guardrails, no safety nets, and no artificial boundaries separating people from the open drop below. From this height, Lysefjord appears far beneath as an emerald-colored ribbon winding through cold, grey rock formations, emphasizing the extreme geological contrast. The boulder is a remnant of the last ice age, left behind when massive glaciers retreated around 50,000 years ago and has remained suspended there across tens of thousands of years. Furong Ancient Town is one of the oldest Tujia settlements in western Hunan, distinguished by a rare vertical urban form where the entire town is built directly onto cliffs with a large waterfall cutting through its core. The site preserves some of the most representative remains of the Tuzi system, a unique indigenous governance structure that ruled southwest China for centuries and is now recognized by UNESCO. A defining feature is the pedestrian walkway constructed directly behind the waterfall curtain, allowing visitors to pass through flowing water while viewing the town through a dense veil of spray. Traditional Tujia stilt houses cling to the cliff faces on both sides of the waterfall, using wooden mortise structures designed to withstand humidity and extreme vertical terrain. During the day, the town appears subdued in grey and brown tones, but at night, thousands of warm yellow lanterns transform Furong into a dramatically different visual environment. The wildebeest migration is a closed annual movement cycle involving roughly 1.5 to 2 million wildebeest, along with hundreds of thousands of zebras and gazelles, circulating between the Serengeti ecosystem in Tanzania and the Masai Mara in Kenya. It is the only migration on Earth that continues 365 days a year with no fixed beginning or final destination, sustained through millions of years of evolution. Within this massive flow, there is no leader or commanding animal, as the herd moves like a single superorganism driven by collective instinct and synchronized responses to rainfall and fresh grass. During the calving peak around February, nearly 8,000 calves are born each day, a number that exceeds the combined hunting capacity of all predators. As the herd advances, millions of hooves churn the dry ground into towering red dust clouds that turn the African sunset into a natural light filter across the plains. Through constant movement and grazing, the animals regulate the ecosystem by trimming grasslands, reducing wildfire risk and accelerating grass regeneration across East Africa. Lizeba Station is one of the rare urban rail stations in the world, where a train passes directly through a residential building between the 6th and 8th floors, while daily life inside remains unaffected. What confuses most visitors is the illusion that the railway was drilled through an existing structure, when in reality both the rail line and the building were designed and constructed simultaneously as a single integrated system. Advanced vibration dampers and sound insulation reduce interior noise levels in nearby apartments to that of a dishwasher or normal conversation. The station clings to a steep riverside slope, perfectly reflecting Chongqing's extreme terrain, where the first floor of one building can align with the 10th floor of another. Sitting in the front carriage of Line 2, passengers experience the unsettling moment of a train floating above the river before heading straight toward a residential block instead of crashing into it. This engineered illusion turns an ordinary arrival into one of the most visually impossible urban scenes in the modern world. Vitsakur is the most bizarre, beech-shaped basalt formation in Iceland, standing alone in the ocean and often described as a sight beyond normal human imagination. From a distance, the rock resembles a massive creature bending down to drink icy sea water, yet in reality, it rises about 49 feet high as the hardened basalt core of an ancient volcano. Over thousands of years, ocean waves, frost, and wind eroded the softer layers, leaving only the volcanic heart standing against relentless natural forces. The formation towers above Iceland's black volcanic sand, where the boundary between geological structure and living form becomes visually indistinguishable. Local folklore claims it is a violent troll turned to stone by the first light of sunrise, before it could retreat to safety. Horizontal Falls is the only horizontal waterfall on Earth, where water is forced to flow sideways between narrow rock gorges instead of plunging downward. The landscape creates an extreme visual contrast as pure turquoise seawater is forced between ancient rusty red sandstone cliffs that are billions of years old. This extraordinary phenomenon is driven by massive tidal ranges reaching about 33 to 39 feet, roughly the height of a four-story building. As enormous volumes of seawater are pushed through two narrow gorges within a few hours, the water level difference between both sides can reach around 16 feet, generating violent, horizontal torrents. Natural historian Sir David Attenborough described this place as one of the greatest natural wonders on Earth and stated that it is a destination worth experiencing at least once in a lifetime. Eilifell is regarded as one of the most difficult to access locations in Iceland due to its deep inland position and complete dependence on extreme natural conditions. Reaching the mountain requires driving along the legendary F210 Fjalla-Sidri route, where no bridges exist, and drivers must ford multiple icy glacial rivers by themselves. What makes Eilifell truly unusual is the thick layer of Grimia moss covering its slopes, a species capable of dramatic color changes depending on moisture levels. Surrounding the base of the mountain, countless small streams and glacial channels twist across black volcanic sand, forming a branching pattern that from above resembles bright veins encircling the isolated green massif. The Chongqing River is the most powerful tidal river on Earth, known as the Silver Dragon, for its ability to turn calm water into a moving wall of destruction within moments. During each tidal surge, a white water wall rising up to about 30 feet forms inside the river and charges upstream with unstoppable force. The sound of the tide can be heard from several miles away, producing a continuous roar strong enough to make the ground vibrate like the advance of a massive cavalry. This river uniquely produces rare physical events where two massive waves from different directions collide at high speed, forming perfect cross or T shapes and launching columns of water skyward. At certain moments, the river surface transforms into a fish-scale tide, with millions of small ripples aligned in precise layers that shimmer like the skin of a gigantic sea creature. The tidal bore can reach speeds of about 25 miles per hour, faster than a human can run, turning the river into a violent water arena in just minutes. The Pinnacles is one of the very few places on Earth where the landscape makes humans feel as if they are standing on another planet. Thousands of ancient limestone pillars rise directly from golden sand, densely spaced yet isolated from one another, creating a dry and illogical natural environment rarely seen on Earth. Located within Nambung National Park in Western Australia, this site is recognized by geologists as one of the strangest limestone deserts ever documented. Few realize that these stone pillars originated from crushed seashells and marine life that accumulated on the ocean floor hundreds of thousands of years ago, later exposed as sea levels dropped and sculpted by wind and erosion. As sunset light strikes at a low angle, the limestone structures reflect deep orange tones, producing a sharp, visual contrast against the surrounding sand and sky. Cono de Arita is widely recognized by geologists as the most perfectly symmetrical natural cone structure on Earth, displaying nearly ideal geometric proportions from every viewing angle. Although it closely resembles a classic volcano, scientific evidence indicates that it never erupted, forming instead from magma that rose but lacked sufficient energy to break through the surface. The dark brown cone stands completely isolated within Sala de Arizaro with no surrounding hills or mountains, emphasizing its solitary presence on the vast white salt plain. Its geological structure combines crystallized salt with red sandstone, creating a remarkably stable formation that resists intense wind erosion and salt corrosion over millions of years. Due to its exceptional preservation and scientific value, the site is strictly protected as a natural monument, and climbing the cone is prohibited to maintain its flawless shape. At sunset, the cone casts a shadow stretching for miles across the salt flat, producing a rare atmosphere of complete stillness within the high desert landscape. Hand of the Desert is considered one of the most isolated public artworks on Earth, rising alone from the harsh core of the Atacama Desert, one of the driest regions on the planet. There are no fences, entrance fees, or permanent guards, allowing visitors to physically approach, touch, or lean against the massive concrete fingers in the open desert landscape. This complete accessibility makes the sculpture structurally vulnerable yet conceptually powerful within an environment defined by emptiness and scale. At night, the absence of light pollution reveals the Milky Way with striking clarity behind the hand, creating an image where the fingers appear to support the star-filled sky itself. Pernalulu National Park is one of the most surreal geological landscapes on Earth, defined by the Bungle Bungle range of beehive-shaped sandstone towers found nowhere else at planetary scale. Although this massive natural formation dates back roughly 350 million years, it remained virtually invisible to the modern world and was only discovered from the air in 1983. Bright orange bands created by iron oxide alternate with dark gray layers formed by ancient bacteria, producing a geological color pattern unmatched anywhere else on Earth. At Cathedral Gorge, a vast natural stone chamber with a high vaulted ceiling creates intense acoustic resonance and dramatic light contrasts that emphasize human scale against geology. Even within this extreme hot sandstone environment, Livistona fan palms grow from narrow rock fissures, demonstrating how life persists under conditions that appear nearly uninhabitable. Kayatua Falls is the largest single-drop waterfall on Earth, where the entire volume of water plunges in one uninterrupted fall without striking any intermediate rock face. Water from the Potaro River carries a deep amber color caused by organic acids from rainforest roots, making the cascade glow like flowing liquid gold under sunlight. With a free fall of about 741 feet, Kayatua rises 4 times higher than Niagara Falls and twice the height of Victoria Falls. An average flow rate of about 23,400 cubic feet per second generates a thunderous roar audible from miles away across the surrounding forest. Aogashima appears as a surreal geological masterpiece featuring a rare double caldera structure, one of the most dramatic volcanic formations on the planet. The island is entirely enclosed by vertical cliffs, rising over 650 feet, forming a natural fortress isolated in the Pacific Ocean and cut off from modern life. At the very center of the massive volcanic crater stands Maruyama, a smaller volcanic cone resting quietly within a concentric structure rarely observed in geology. From an aerial perspective, the vivid green vegetation contrasts sharply with the deep cobalt waters of the surrounding Kuroshio current, producing an extreme color contrast. What astonishes scientists most is a small village located entirely inside an active volcanic crater where people live directly atop a potentially eruptive structure. Access to the island depends entirely on natural conditions, as boats and helicopters are frequently cancelled due to rough seas, turning Aogashima into a treasure reserved only for the most persistent travelers. Rocamadour is one of the very few towns in the world built as if suspended in mid-air, clinging to a limestone cliff rising about 390 feet above the Alzou Gorge. Throughout the Middle Ages, it was one of Europe's most important pilgrimage centers, drawing kings, knights, and believers from across the continent seeking prayer and penance. The town is organized under a rigid feudal hierarchy with 3 distinct levels, featuring a military fortress at the top, a complex of 7 churches in the middle, and secular homes at the valley floor. These levels are connected by a monumental stone staircase of 216 steps, worn down over more than 1,000 years by millions of pilgrims climbing on their knees. The sanctuary is not merely built on rock, but carved directly into the cliff, with the walls and roof of the Notre Dame Chapel formed by the natural limestone itself. Above the chapel, the legendary sword Durandal was embedded in the rock for 13 centuries, linking Rocamadour to the epic legend of the Knight Roland. Basti Bridge is not a standalone structure, but sits deep within a forest of jagged sandstone pillars where thousands of stone spires rise like giant fingers from the ground, forming a globally rare geological scene. At an elevation of roughly 636 feet above the valley below, thick fog can erase the mountain base, making the bridge appear suspended in mid-air. The structure consists of 7 sandstone arches built directly into the cliff, blending so seamlessly with the natural rock that the artificial boundary nearly disappears. Looking straight down from the bridge reveals a sheer vertical void where the Elbe River below appears no wider than a thin, winding thread. The surrounding landscape creates a striking visual contrast between the dry gray-yellow cliffs and the vast, deep green forest stretching across the valley. From this vantage point, viewers can see the legendary horseshoe bend of the Elbe River, offering one of the most iconic panoramic views in Germany. The 12 Apostles are the most precious landmark along the Great Ocean Road, where massive limestone stacks stand isolated offshore like watchtowers of the sea. Over roughly 20 million years, relentless Southern Ocean waves and winds eroded the coastal cliffs, separating them from the mainland and leaving pillars rising up to about 148 feet above the water. The landscape is shaped by a stark contrast between the warm ochre tones of limestone and the turquoise to deep blue colors of the surrounding ocean. At sunset, angled sunlight causes a distinct color shift as the rock columns move from dark gold to burnt orange and then reddish purple against the darkening sea. The site reaches an unusually high level of color saturation, where rock, shallow water, and deep ocean form 3 clearly separated visual layers. With an average erosion rate of about 0.8 inches per year and recorded collapses, this formation is gradually disappearing from the coastline. Setsadards is the most precious gem of the Azores archipelago and one of Portugal's 7 natural wonders, where a massive ancient volcanic crater opens like the eye of the Atlantic Ocean. The entire area sits inside a caldera, with a perimeter of about 7.5 miles, surrounded by green cliffs rising nearly 1,640 feet that isolate the inner world from the violent ocean outside. At the center lie 2 enormous lakes, Lagoa Azul and Lagoa Verde, which are connected yet maintain completely different colors, forming a rare visual paradox. In summer, The road descending into the caldera is lined with millions of blue and purple hydrangeas, turning the route into one of the most scenic volcanic pathways on Earth. From the Vista do Rei viewpoint, the entire crater and both lakes unfold in a single panoramic view from above. Inside the caldera, strong winds are blocked by the surrounding walls, creating a calm microclimate where the lake surface reflects the sky like a mirror, sharply contrasting with the restless world beyond. Kirkjufell is one of the very few mountains on Earth with near-perfect geometry, rising directly from the sea in a fully formed conical structure. During the Ice Age, when much of Iceland was buried under ice sheets thousands of feet thick, only the peak of Kirkjufell pierced through the glacier, classifying it as a nunatak that endured for millions of years. Its isolated coastal position makes the mountain a prime focal point for auroral activity, where green and violet northern lights frequently gather above the summit during winter nights. Kirkjufell entered popular culture as the real-world model for Arrowhead Mountain in Game of Thrones, symbolizing a harsh and dangerous land beyond human safety. The most iconic viewpoint lies at Kirkjufellsfoss waterfall, where three small cascades in the foreground frame the mountain in a nearly perfect natural composition. In summer, the midnight sun keeps Kirkjufell illuminated for 24 continuous hours, dissolving the usual cycle of sunset and creating the sensation of suspended time. The Corinth Canal is one of the most striking man-made wonders in Greece, where an impossibly narrow waterway still allows large vessels to pass between two land masses. Unlike winding canals, Corinth is a perfectly straight cut, stretching over nearly 4 miles through solid limestone, appearing from above like a precise blade, splitting the isthmus in two. Limestone cliffs rising up to nearly 300 feet press tightly against the canal, turning the space below into a vertical chasm where ships and people appear unnervingly small. Vessels hundreds of feet long squeeze through a channel only about 79 feet wide, with the gap between hull and rock sometimes no wider than an outstretched arm. The sapphire blue waters of the Mediterranean are trapped between pale grey limestone walls, creating an extreme color contrast that feels almost unreal under the Greek sun. First envisioned by ancient Roman emperors more than 2,000 years ago, the canal stands today as a symbol of human determination carried across millennia. Garsadalur is one of the most geographically extreme villages in the Faroe Islands and the only settlement on Vagar Island without a natural harbour directly accessible from the sea. Before the year 2004, Garsadalur was almost completely isolated, reachable only by helicopter or steep mountain routes, until a tunnel through solid rock reduced the journey to just a few minutes by car. Despite being one of the most photographed locations in the Faroe Islands, the village maintains an exceptionally small, permanent population, at times dropping to only 11 to 15 residents, occasionally outnumbered by visiting tourists. The defining visual feature of the landscape is Mulafossur, a powerful waterfall that plunges directly from a vertical cliff into the deep Atlantic Ocean without any transitional shoreline. The village houses preserve traditional Nordic turf roof architecture, providing natural insulation while visually merging the settlement into the surrounding green valley slopes. Statue of Unity is the tallest statue in the world, completed in a record period of 33 months, representing one of the largest construction and logistical efforts ever undertaken for a monumental sculpture. Its scale exceeds normal perception, as even stacking the Statue of Liberty on the shoulders of Christ the Redeemer would still result in a combined height shorter than the pedestal and body of this monument. Inside the chest are two tuned mass dampers, each weighing about 550,000 pounds, engineered to reduce oscillations caused by strong winds and seismic activity, a rare feature in monumental statuary. The exterior surface is not cast as a single shell, but assembled from approximately 6,500 individual bronze panels, each handcrafted and fitted together with extreme precision like a colossal three-dimensional puzzle. Palm Jumeirah is the largest artificial island in the world, constructed using about 94 million cubic meters of sand and 7 million tons of rock, without relying on concrete or steel reinforcement for its foundation. The entire structure depends on sand compaction, gravity, and natural rock stability, allowing this massive project to exist more as an engineered landform than a conventional building. The crescent-shaped breakwater surrounding the island is not continuous, leaving two openings roughly 330 feet wide that allow seawater to circulate and completely refresh the inner waters every 13 days, preventing stagnation and pollution. From above, The island forms a precise palm tree geometry with a central trunk, 17 symmetrical fronds, and an outer crescent that functions as a protective barrier against strong waves from the Persian Gulf. Palm Jumeirah also features a monorail running along the trunk, recognized as the first operational monorail system ever built in the Middle East. The rock breakwaters unintentionally created vast artificial coral reefs that attracted marine life back to an area once dominated by barren seabed, while above them rise some of the world's most luxurious villas, hotels, and resorts frequented by global elites. Kumbhalga Fort is globally recognized for its continuous defensive wall stretching about 22 miles, making it the second longest fort wall in the world after the Great Wall of China. The wall is so thick that historical records note 8 horses could once ride side by side along its top, reflecting the fortress's exceptional military scale within the rugged Aravalli Range. Inside the fort lies an extraordinary spiritual landscape containing more than 360 temples, including roughly 300 Jain temples and the remainder Hindu, forming a rare example of a fortified religious city. At the highest point stands Badal Mahal, the Cloud Palace, divided into inner and outer sections and designed with a natural ventilation system that keeps interiors cool, despite the surrounding desert climate. The fortress is secured by 7 massive gateways, known as poles, each incorporating complex defensive traps, with Ram Pole considered the most sophisticated surviving example of medieval Indian fortification design. Today, visitors can hike directly along the immense wall itself, traversing steep mountain ridges and experiencing firsthand the scale, endurance, and strategic genius of one of South Asia's greatest military constructions. Isola di Loreto is regarded as a symbol of absolute privacy, as the entire island is privately owned and inaccessible through any conventional form of public tourism. Historically, it served as a modest residence for nuns of the Order of St. Clare, before being transformed into an exclusive private estate with a castle-like appearance dominating the waters of Lake Iseo. Despite its very small size, the island is densely covered by a landscaped park of conifers, pines, and larch trees, forming a dark green mass that visually isolates it from the surrounding shoreline. Its strictly protected status means visitors are not allowed to step onto the island under any circumstances, reinforcing its reputation as one of the most inaccessible and curiosity-inducing places in northern Italy. With no entry paths, tickets, or guided tours, all interaction with the island is limited to distant observation from the surface of the lake itself. Elt's Castle is considered one of the most complete surviving examples of a community castle, where multiple branches of a single noble family lived together while constructing separate towers on one shared foundation. This unusual arrangement resulted in 8 tightly packed towers with distinct architectural styles layered over centuries within a very limited footprint. Unlike typical military castles built on high peaks for visibility, this fortress was deliberately hidden deep in a narrow valley, allowing it to remain unconquered for more than 800 years. Because the structure follows the natural contours of the bedrock, many interior rooms feature slanted walls, uneven ceilings, and irregular angles rather than standard rectangular shapes. The Elsbach stream curves around 3 sides of the castle, forming a natural moat that isolates it almost completely from the surrounding landscape. Having never been looted, the castle treasury still preserves more than 500 gold and jeweled masterpieces dating from the 12th through the 19th centuries in near-perfect condition. Hill of Crosses is regarded as the largest open-air cross museum in the world, containing an estimated total exceeding 200,000 crosses and continuing to grow each day. During the Soviet era, authorities used bulldozers at least 3 times to level the hill, burn wooden crosses, and melt metal ones down for scrap in an attempt to erase religious symbols. Remarkably, by the following morning, thousands of new crosses would appear again, as if no destruction had occurred, even though the area was under strict surveillance. With no formal planning, large crosses support smaller ones. Smaller crosses carry rosaries, and the ground becomes a dense forest of sharp forms that turns the paths into a narrow labyrinth. Among the crosses stand carvings of Jesus Christ, Our Lady of Sorrows, and Lithuanian national heroes, transforming the site into a living outdoor folk sculpture museum. A unique local feature is the Vitis cross with 2 horizontal beams, blending Christian symbolism with the Lithuanian coat of arms in a single form. Bardarbag is the largest royal sandstone cenotaph complex in the Thar Desert, where dozens of golden chatri domes rise closely together from the arid landscape. Unlike traditional tombs such as the Taj Mahal, these structures contain no buried bodies, serving only as ceremonial markers for cremation sites of Rajput kings and nobles. The oldest and most prominent memorial honors Jai Singh II, positioned on a small, isolated hill to commemorate the ruler who developed vital water reservoirs for the desert region. During daylight hours, the stone blends into the surrounding sands, but at sunset, the entire site glows intensely, resembling molten gold. The height and scale of each dome directly represent the power and rank of the individual honored, with taller domes signifying greater authority. Despite centuries of erosion from desert winds, carvings of horses, elephants, and intricate patterns on the sandstone columns remain remarkably sharp. Kerlingafjöll is considered the largest and most vividly colored rhyolite field across Iceland's interior highlands, where geological color dominates the entire landscape. Despite being surrounded by glaciers and permanent snowfields, the ground continuously releases thick sulfur steam columns, creating a direct confrontation between ice and geothermal heat. The rhyolite soil here changes color with moisture, shifting from pale yellow and orange in dry conditions to deep red and dark brown immediately after rainfall. In certain zones, heavy snowfall never reaches the surface because geothermal heat evaporates the snow while it is still suspended in the air. Neon green moss patches scatter across the red terrain around hot springs, forming sharp visual contrasts against the barren ground. Access requires crossing the gravel F35 route reserved for four-wheel drive vehicles, turning arrival into a genuine off-road challenge. The Dark Hedges is one of the oldest and most visually distorted beech tree avenues still remaining in Europe, with many trees reaching an age of approximately 250 years. More than 90 beech trees line both sides of the road, their twisted trunks and elongated branches interlocking overhead to form a near-perfect natural tunnel that blocks much of the sky above. This site is not a natural forest, but a carefully planned landscape project from the 18th century, planted around 1775 by the wealthy landowner James Stewart to impress visitors arriving at his Georgian estate. The original avenue contained over 150 trees, yet fewer than 90 remain today as aging, disease, and repeated Atlantic storms steadily reduce their numbers. As a result, the dark hedges is considered a finite landscape where each fallen tree marks an irreversible step toward the eventual disappearance of this iconic natural corridor.